Welcome to Reach Church. I'm Marshall Fant, the Director of Church Consulting and Strategic Planning for Gospel Fellowship Association Missions. My purpose is to encourage pastors and church leaders as you refocus, renew, and revitalize your churches. We've established this podcast to offer practical tips and suggestions as you equip disciples to make disciples. Marshall Fant, welcome back to GFA's Reach Church. So glad to have you tuning back in or watching back in. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes or Google Play, we thank you for joining us. I want to thank GFA, as always, and the great staff here of putting on the podcast. Again, we don't have any commercial sponsors, which allows us to do this exactly how we want to do it. And so thankful for that. Today, I've got really one of part of the Fant family, really, although his last name is not Fant. We're great fans. John Turner, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so John is a pastor in Hampton, Virginia. So, John, tell us a little bit the name of your church, your wife, your child, and how long you've been there.
Sure. Grace Baptist Church here in Hampton, Virginia. We've been here just over 3 years now. My wife's Anya, and she's from Poland. We have a son, Daniel, who just turned 5.
Wow. Great. All right. So the topic of this podcast, and I've been at Grace Baptist Church several times. I'll give my history with that and then let Pastor Turner fill it in. But really, revitalization. And when you go in, Titus 1:5, Paul tells Titus, I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are remaining. So you have to analyze what's there, right? And John, we kind of did this as a tag team, and really to see what's there and to really then start to prioritize where to go. Now, for the sake of our listeners and watchers, the way we kind of look at a church, one thing would be philosophy. Okay, so what's been the philosophy of the church, and then finances, and then next will be facilities. And facilities is a huge component of a church, to be a welcoming church, to be a church where people feel comfortable. And of course, then you got leadership, and then you got your website. But for this podcast, we're going to focus on facilities. All right. So, John, describe. All right. So, Grace Baptist Church, Hampton, Virginia, middle class neighborhood, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Exterior of the church is brick.
It is brick church.
Yeah. On a main road. On a main road.
So that's right. Main thoroughfare. Lots of cars coming by. Four lanes.
What year was the church built?
So the church was built in 78. It was started in 53. So next year will be 70 years. But 78 was this actual building that we're in right now.
Okay. So, folks, if you can put that in your mind, 1978, brick building, middle class America, safe neighborhood, good neighborhood. And so what I want to do is describe here really a little bit about the church and really how John took on the facilities and of everything. So I want to back up. My first visit to the church was in 2018. And I want to give a lot of credit to Pastor David Luthi. He was there before John. And this is the reason I want to give Pastor Luthi so much credit, because when Pastor Luthi retired, he told the church that there were changes that need to be made. All right. So I personally think that set the table. So when John and Anya got there, the people had in their mind that with Pastor Luthi's approval, there would need to be some changes in the ministry. And so I'm not talking about radical changes from theology. That's not what I mean, but just changes to be current. And so I really think, looking back and seeing it before John came and now with John and Anya, and we were there a couple months ago, Pastor Luthi did just a huge blessing to the church by making that statement. John, you want to follow up anything on that?
Yeah, I agree that kind of those two parts, our previous pastor, Pastor Luthi, and he continued to be a support. I mean, he was behind us throughout the transition process. And then you came and did a church consultation in 2018 as well. Yep. And so coming in, I have 2 men of experience with that background, that's out there that I can go, well, let's look what they said. And that helped a great deal as well.
Okay. You're being very kind. Okay. But the whole point is, because I've been, all right, so the focus is again facility. So how do you prioritize? How do you really start where to tackle? Because I've been in churches where, we can't touch that room because so-and-so who's now with the Lord redid that room. Or can't touch this room because so-and-so funded. All right, so let me just say, so was there anything like that at Grace Baptist Church?
There were some of those things. Somebody donated a table, or somebody painted a mural on the wall. And so, we had to deal with those things. Some people brought their tables back home. I said, well, hey, if you want it doesn't fit here anymore, but you're welcome to keep it. And, we had that happen. Someone had a mural, hand-drawn mural on the nursery wall.
Oh.
Well, it couldn't stay there anymore. It had been there. It lived its life. We took a photo of it, had it blown up, framed it, and gave it to them before we painted over it. And so just things like that where we want to be sensitive, but at the same time move forward.
That is, all right. So would you repeat that again? So this was somebody who spent their time with the mural. And what did you do again? So, I never heard that done. That is a great idea.
Yeah, we took a photo of it and had it blown up, nice large print, framed it, and thanked them for it, provided them the frame, and just thanked them because it had served the nursery well for a number of years. So
was that well received?
It was. Yeah. It was. They were very thankful.
Wow. So that's a tremendous idea. All right. So so I guess the question got to ask is, okay, so right now there is and always has been an outside appeal. All right. But what I want you to do without saying anything, we're looking at the church through a first-time guest eyes, okay? So before all this started, and we're going to look at some pictures of what's been done. So I want you to describe it and then tell me how did you prioritize where you were going to start, and then how did you go from there? Okay, so give us 1970. What was it built? 73?
1978.
78. Okay.
So. The church building itself, largely, especially on the inside in terms of decoration, was largely untouched. Wood paneling, dark. Some of the light fixtures are just shop lights down the hallway in a couple places. Old carpet.
The outside doors were solid wooden doors, if I remember right.
Right. Outside doors are solid wood. And the exterior largely was nice. It had issues, but it largely, from a visual standpoint, looked nice from a distance. But once you stepped in, it was like you were stepping in 4 decades ago, in terms of the building itself.
All right. So how did you prioritize on where to start? All right. So let me say this: nothing had been touched, right? So you had an auditorium, Sunday school rooms, nursery, an office. I remember like a little audiovisual room, accounting room, and then down the hall, past the children's Sunday school classes, you had a fellowship hall. Okay, was that added on? I think maybe
it was. Yeah. It was added on early '80s. So
okay, so it's kind of like an L-shaped building, and you could give everybody your website because you could see the building online.
Sure. GraceInHampton.com. So GraceInHampton.com is the website.
All right. All right. So where did you decide to start?
Well, general rule of thumb is for visitors is nursery and then bathrooms. Okay. Right. So nursery was the priority, first of all.
And you got some pictures,
honestly,
right?
Coming in, we're first year. I didn't even know, okay, how are we actually going to how are we going to start? And part of this has to do with congregation, right? We're in a congregation that over 15 years had declined from, about 90 people down to about 34 attendance, on a Sunday morning when we arrived, primarily older.
Right.
And so how do you tackle the physical work and, get that done? And so immediately the thought was, well, we need some help. Right. And so we started with a mission team, having a mission team come in, a work team, and they kicked things off on our nursery for us.
All right. So with those initial fundings, because a lot of churches you go in, just like yours, The building was paid for, correct? If I remember that right.
Yeah, that's correct. The building was paid for, no debt. Right. We had maybe about $23,000 in savings.
Okay.
At that point, so there was not a sky is falling situation. We were financially okay. Now the budget was 90,000, and we're bringing in 72, so that savings disappears quickly. But we knew there were going to be some challenges there.
And you, so as far as your personal support, so you weren't a church, you weren't replanting mission or anything. The church was paying your salary, right?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to lay the table for everybody. All right, so back to the nursery. So how did you fund it? And I know you got pictures you're going to put up so you can put them up anytime you want to. But how did you fund it? How did you decide? You said, what did you say, nursery and bathrooms?
So, right. So nursery and bathrooms were the rule of thumb. So we just started with the nursery first, to kick that off. And this is what our nursery looked like previously. And it's a lower ceiling, a lot of clutter, dark. Probably more toys than what you would need, but very small, as well. And so what we did was when the team came on, there was a classroom next door, and this was the classroom over there. This was pretty typical of most of our classrooms. It's a yellow wood paneling in there. And we took the wall down between their two rooms. And actually the mission team is the one who did that part. And so you can see the two sides there. Just give you some of the graphics there, going through. And we took the wall down. You can see the mural that someone had painted previously, and we mentioned that before. But there was a small closet in there, just used for storing toilet paper, as well as a water heater. And so in place of that, we moved that wall out, and they combined the two rooms, and this was the result. And so pretty big transformation. The room doubled in size, as well as adding a children's bathroom. And so
so the children's bathroom's in that back corner, right?
Right.
There it is. Good.
Corner there, and then you can see the children's bathroom there as well. So
you did new ceiling, new walls, you expanded it, you got new flooring, new paint, new lights. I mean, everything, right? And a new bathroom.
Right. Yeah, basically everything was changed. Even the old cabinets were painted. For our group, the team came. They did a lot of the work, but we had to finish off some walls, and we had to put some crown molding in and some baseboard. And so it was kind of like a starter, and then it got our folks moving to finish the job.
Good.
And that worked really well.
Now, how did you raise the money to do this?
Well, so we our previous budget, which I basically kind of inherited that budget the first year. It had been set before. It had a $6,000 maintenance amount. Now, the budget was 70,000. At this point, we're on track. I mean, it was 90,000. We're on track to bring in 72. So I know whatever I'm spending is not really is gonna be in the red, most likely. So we just set a number at 2,500.
Okay.
And we I talked through the church, about that, and we set that number. We didn't have to approve anything because we had enough funds within the budget.
Sure.
Already, just because it wasn't a great budget. But so we used that out of the funds that had already been approved. But knowing that, in reality, this is probably coming out of savings.
All right. So let me ask you this. Did the mission team that came up there, they provided labor, sweat equity for you, or just sweat work, right?
They did. And, and definitely some knowledge and skill on that team as well.
Now, did they provide any funds for the materials or anything on this trip?
Well, so for the, no, they did not fund the project. with one exception. One of the team members really thought we needed to put in an attic ladder.
Okay.
And I said, look, we got 2,500. We can't do this. And he bought it himself for us.
All right.
He said, you really need this. And
Okay.
I am so glad that he did. That we've used that hundreds of times since then.
I bet.
But yeah, largely, the majority of the funds came from the church here.
All right. So let's park right here a minute. So a church, let's say, okay, we're not revitalizing. I mean, we're good. All right, look at this project. So maybe you could send a mission team out with funds or without, whatever, to help do something like this. Okay. So I'm just taking a little sidetrack there. All right, John. So this is the nursery. Looks fantastic. Okay. And so your next project, and then we'll go back. So at the end, I want to go through the blessings and why you did and what have been the results, maybe some unexpected challenges. So where did you go from here? So the nursery's done.
Okay, so we finished the nursery, and we worked on the sound booth, the smaller project.
Okay.
It had been back kind of in the church office. You had to listen to things through the church windows. It just wasn't working. They couldn't hear well. The sound wasn't good. And it was important enough to prioritize it. Thankfully, we did, because the upgrades helped us with COVID coming and being able to do online broadcasting and things.
All right, so let me ask you. I'm sorry. I cut you off. What did you say?
Well, I was just say that the timing worked really well for that, because we were finishing that in early 2020.
All right, so my question would be this: at each project. So you had the money and an idea of what it should. I mean, you had a plan and money before you started each of these room by room projects. Is that or is that
right? So what we did with 2020 was we set up a special project fund, and we knew this isn't going to work out of normal budget funds. Okay. This is going to come out of savings. And so in January 2020, $6,500 were approved was approved by the church for a set of specific projects.
Okay.
And so that was a side porch repair, soffit outside where the birds were nesting up in the church building. Working on the hallway and that part, the sound booth, the sign outside, insulating a flower room, some interior painting, and then our church septic system was not functioning at all.
All right, so let's hold on.
We had to do that as well.
Did you get outside consultation for this? I know you're good with your hands. Okay, it's just I know, and also know you have a man in your church that's very gifted in this, right?
Right. We do have someone who, he is available, and he's good with his hands as well. He has a lot of knowledge in different areas from odd projects. He's not a professional tradesman, I guess you could say, but skilled in a lot of areas.
Yeah. And willing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's the greatest attribute there.
All right. So as you do these room by room, so you went from the nursery to the sound booth, and you do this. So start to show us more pictures, I think, because that's where the proof, it just looks so. And again, I was there before and I've been there after, so I'm just trying to communicate this to our listeners and watchers. And understand, if you are listening on the audio, please go to the YouTube so you can see these pictures.
Okay, so this was the sound booth.
Oh,
and that's the man you were speaking of there.
Yeah, and through those windows is where it used to be, right?
Right, it used to be through the windows, and so just couldn't hear. And this is one of those, I call it like a sore thumb issue. It was a problem during regular worship to get the sound right, and so it was one that it was just sticking out like a sore thumb. Okay. And so we prioritized it for that reason.
Okay.
And so, as you can see, as the project was progressing here, and, eventually it went on and the windows get closed up in the back. But that's the sound booth project.
I was going to ask you, with that sound booth project, at some point you took out some pews in the back of the auditorium.
We did. So in order to make room for this project, and And let's see if this
right,
will.
So while you're doing that, with the pews, you probably, with everything, all the pews, you probably could seat like 125 or something like that. Maybe. I'm just trying to.
Right. Well, we had.
How many pews on each
we
side?
We had 30 pews.
On each side?
Yeah, okay. 30 pews total. So
okay.
15 on each side. And so ours are 12-foot pews. So you figure about 6 per pew.
Yeah.
You know, roughly. And so what does that work out to?
Whatever. We'll come back and figure that out later.
18,
180. Yeah,
180.
Yeah, and then 80% of that.
So a pretty large section there. So this is just a photo of later on after the sound booth. You see, this is COVID years, so we've got the mask on then. But so we took out 3 pews in the back on each side. We didn't change any of the spacing further up. The spacing stayed the same, but we lost 6 pews because of this, and it was a combination between losing those pews, and we're a Baptist church, so the most popular seats are the back row. So you know, if you figure if you have 35 on a Sunday and 5 are back in the nursery, well, 30 people in there, and I mean you can fit 30 in the back 3 or 4 rows of those 15.
Sure.
And so there's some Sundays where I feel like I'm preaching to folks who are 35 and 40 feet away because that's where the majority of the congregation is sitting.
Sure.
So it's just not a good experience in that regard for communicating the word.
But the byproduct, so if you walked out of your auditorium and looked at the halls, there's no way to gather in fellowship, right? There's nowhere to do that.
Right. So there is almost no room, at that time, and I can just show you that our largest section. This was kind of our foyer or vestibule area. Was this right here?
Right.
And that's about 4.5 feet between where those 2 tables are.
Right. So this is obviously before renovation.
Exactly.
And nowhere for people to fellowship.
Exactly.
So I think you told me the unexpected or the planned blessing was when you took those pews out, now you had room in the back of the auditorium. You created fellowship space, right?
Right. Okay. It did. It created fellowship space back there. And this photo here, you can actually, you can see the area. We now have a welcome table. Yeah. Mugs, a gift for visitors, and there's room there for folks to gather and fellowship.
All right. So again, those that just listening, you go to the YouTube and watch this because it really puts it all together. So I apologize for those that just have the audio, but go to YouTube and you can see what Pastor Turner's talking about. All right. So you created new sound booth, created fellowship space, and really gave the idea of the auditorium opening up some for post-COVID, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly. It gave some extra space there. Yes.
All right, so now we got the auditorium, but all right, so nursery, sound booth, was the auditorium, what was after, how did you prioritize after those 2?
Okay, so next came the hallway. Okay. Normally it'd be the bathroom, but with COVID coming, there was a period of time where folks weren't going to be in the church. And so that was just ordered by the governor and in the state that we're in. And so we took that opportunity and said, well, Lord, if no one's here, maybe we could work on our hallway right now.
Okay.
And so that's how the hallway sort of jumped up in terms of priority.
Yeah.
And so I'll just show a couple of these.
Again, previous was dark wall paneling and dark carpet, right?
Right. And so you can see this image here. This is another view of the hallway. This is looking toward the sanctuary. The ceiling had yellowed, old tile, old ceiling tile. You could actually see the lines of the boards through the carpet as you look down the hallway. And then the other aspect was there had been some changes to the building. And so this is the hallway going to our fellowship hall. we had door frames in the middle of the hallway that you had to walk through to get to the fellowship hall. And so there were always choke points, people trying to get past each other, and became very difficult. So in terms of the renovation, we went from this right here for this section to this, and so just
all right. So just briefly, go ahead. New floor, new walls, painted walls. Did you sheetrock that? Did you take the panels out and put sheetrock?
So they had already had sheetrock behind the wood paneling. In this case, we had some repair work to do, but a lot of it was already there. We did have to cut the top of the wood paneling because it was behind the ceiling tile grid. Okay. So we cut that off at the top and put a little piece of trim to cover that.
At the same time, wait a minute. Same time with your sign, you did a new logo somewhere along the way.
Right. We really finished that about the first 6 months that we were here.
Okay.
So so that was already completed. But now we had a place to put it.
Yeah. And those exit doors, those are the same doors that were dark, and you made windows and painted them, right? Am I thinking right? Tell me.
Right. So that's the old doors are on there now. We just ordered window inserts and we cut them out. The old door closers wouldn't work, but we changed the door closers out, got window inserts, and then painted the doors. So still the same old doors that were there, same hardware that was there.
Wow. All right, continue on with the tour of the building here. Just continue on tell us, and then we'll come back and fill in some of the details.
Sure. Okay. So we had looked down toward the sanctuary. This is that same view now, and you can see all right, you got new signage up on the left. New signage. That was one of the complaints that folks had. I can't find things. We also added signage on all of the doors, and every door got a room number and a name outside the door. And so that was a big change as well. Our hallway heading toward the fellowship hall. We took all of the door frames out and expanded it to the same length all the way down.
Wow.
And so
now you did all this either with yourself or mission team work, right?
This was all in-house. Yeah. So we did not have a mission team, for this. So,
all right.
We talked about one of the men in our church. We have some other men who came in and did some of the painting and some of the drywall finishing. We have a man who does maintenance at Meineke locations, and he came in and did all of put down the flooring for us.
So is that just like a vinyl floor, luxury vinyl or whatever it is?
Yeah, luxury vinyl plank, waterproof. You can mop it.
Yep.
We used lumber liquidators for that.
Yeah, sure.
And in that regard, I'll just mention we signed up as a pro, and so we saved 50 cents a square foot. By gaining a pro account. And if you're on a tight budget, these pro accounts, even Lowe's, Home Depot, they have them, but other stores as well. You can save a great deal of money as you start getting contractor rates for these things. Our ceiling tiles, and we changed our ceiling tile grid from 2x4, 2 foot by 4 foot to 2x2.
Okay. And
so we added in the T's because our old grid would start sagging and it didn't look as good. Well, we shored that up. And then we got all of that from a local supply house, not a big box store, a supply house. And, things like the T's were half the price as what they were at the big box store because we're getting contractor rates. And so, there's a lot of opportunities using these local supply house companies to save money.
All right, so let's continue the tour because I know you added a room or two. I know we'll get to that.
Sure. Let me show a few other rooms here. In terms of our classrooms, I'll just kind of give you a quick look at what our classrooms were like before. So this was our This was our prayer room. You'll see this
typical.
later. This is what would become the coffee room.
Okay.
You'll notice we used to have electric baseboard heaters, and we got rid of all of those. They weren't really being used. They were just a trip hazard. All of that came out. This was a room that had some renovation already done to it, and so we sort of finished that off. Another one of our classrooms. You see yellow wood paneling, and see one of our other rooms here as well. But that gives you an idea. This was sort of the beginning of one of the classroom projects, and at this point we had painted the walls. We put in the ceiling tile grid up top. In this case, we were keeping the carpet, and so we had pulled it out to do the work, brought it back in, and we would add baseboard. The other big thing that really didn't look very nice, and I think you can see it here, we had these old HVAC vents, right, where the air would come through, and they would sag and they'd fall down, and sometimes we had reports of parents coming in and saying, I think that vent's about to fall on my child's head, in the Sunday school class. So we were able to change those out, and you can see that in these photos to ones that fit and sit within that grid as well. So that's sort of the before photos there, and let me give you just a couple of the classrooms here. So as the classroom changed, we moved to this was an updated room.
Wow.
One that we went through. Another one here after that project. This is actually the one that we were looking at before once it was completed.
Wow.
And then the other really one of the last rooms that we completed was our coffee room, and this is the prayer room, but we also have it set up here where folks can come in and get coffee.
All right, Lee, stop that one right there. Okay, so you have a refrigerator, a place for your coffee. Now back over to the right. There you go. You got books, prayer requests, things they can check out. But this really, I was most impressed with this room. And like I said, I think you bought all this furniture used, if I remember correctly, right? Something like that.
Right. The table bases, the chairs. The chairs came from a local Mexican restaurant that closed.
Yeah.
But
so what I'm saying, all this doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but what an effect it has. And this is called your prayer room, right?
Right. This is our prayer room. One of our deacons, even before this, had come the idea, and as we were going through the pastoral transition, folks would come in here and pray. And once the transition happened, it just sort of died out. I mean, there wasn't anything in the room that attracted people into it.
Right.
And so the goal now is, now we have a place where folks actually gather, and now we can hopefully fulfill that original intended purpose. It helps to have coffee, right? and having other folks getting together in the room there. So,
all right, now one other comment, and then we need to continue our tour and wrap it up. So, tell them what that is on the table. What is that looks like a picture? What is that? A prayer card? What is that?
So we have a missionary prayer card on the table, and so we just have just a way to keep a missionary in front of folks.
Yeah. So as they sit down, there's a missionary you can pray for right in front. Great.
Exactly.
Great idea.
Reminder.
Okay. So what else in the building? And then we'll go back and wrap some things up. So what else you want to show us here? Sure.
Well, this is not so much a photo. This is a graph. And I wanted to just bring this out because this has to do with our bathroom renovation.
All right.
And,
so as far as our listeners,
church.
Listeners, you need to get on YouTube. All right, go ahead.
So this is our church water bill. Okay. Wow. So when I came in 2019, we would have water bills hitting around $100. And I came to realize, these toilets just don't stop. They're not stopping the water consistently.
Wow.
And so I start checking them every service, every time it gets used. Okay. We drop the bill down, and now it's about $60 a month.
Wow.
And then you'll notice a change happens right here, right? You see that pink line? That's when we put in new toilets. And so just for that difference, right? We were paying $60, almost $60 a month on average for our water bill previously. After the new toilets, our water bill was $19.09 on average a month.
Wow. Okay.
So $40 a month, $480 a year.
Yeah.
A toilet from the supply house, a nice toilet, cost us $200.
Wow.
And so we changed all 5. And so in 2 years, we've paid for the toilets.
Yeah,
and now the church is gaining a savings of $480 a year.
Wow. Amazing. Again, your church, Pastor Luther transitions out, so the church needs to grow. And you've done bathrooms, nursery. You've done really the only thing in the auditorium was the sound system and removal of the pews, right?
Right. Well, and the other thing was the spacing of the pews.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was one thing that helped a lot because we had 30 pews in there, 15 on each side. We took out 6 for the sound booth, but then kind of post COVID, I saw that sitting every other worked a lot better. Right. Having folks come forward. Sure. And so how do we make this happen? Because it's going to be miserable when everybody goes back to sitting on those back 3 rows. And our pews weren't very good anyway. When your pastor's sitting up before the service and you think he's up there just praying. I mean, I would literally watch when someone who came in and they would sit down on one side of the pew and the person on the other side would pop up like a seesaw. And that's not a great experience for visitors. Right? No. So we went in and literally I took off my shoes and just bounced on all the pews all the way down to find out which ones were the weakest pews. And we pulled those pews out of there and we respaced the remaining pews. So we lost 6 more pews. We went down to having 9 pews on each side. So from 30 previously down to just 18. Okay. And that made a tremendous difference because now our sanctuary only seats maybe 80 people. But at the same time, when we have a service and we have 35, 38, 40 people in there,
it feels full.
It feels much more full. I mean, it kind of is the glass half full or half empty. Well, you can debate that at 50%, but when you're only at 20%, it doesn't matter whether you say we're 20% full or 80% empty. Either one is bad. There is nothing good in there. And so this helped, that situation just feel better. The sanctuary feel full. We had a man in our church when I came and he said, Pastor, I'm looking forward to the day when every seat in this auditorium is full. There's 2 ways to accomplish that. you could get people in there, you can take some of the pews out. And both ways work. And so we moved further in that direction. But part of the way we did that was taking seating out.
All right. So let me ask you, so you made a comment to me about first-time guests. So one of the greatest blessings again, all we're talking about is facilities. We're not, and some finances, of course. But tell us about what happened post renovation with guests.
So the one of the major changes that happened was when folks came in particularly after our hallway was completed, they came back for a second visit.
Wow. Okay.
And our first year here, we had guests filter through, and in areas large as ours, you're going to have guests filter through. They just didn't come back. They would come once. And so, the nursery renovation's done, the hallways renovation is done. And now the guests come in and they come back for a second or third visit, and some are still here, right? Yeah. Still continuing to attend. This past Sunday morning, looking out, over 50% of the folks in the pews attending on Sunday are new since we arrived.
Wow.
And that just wasn't happening prior to the renovation.
It also changes the attitude once you're there, right? I mean, the brightness and the neatness, and because when you walked in before, it looked 1970s.
Right.
I mean, but now it looks current, fresh, clean, especially for children.
Right.
Any other comments on that?
Yeah, and there's just an aspect of sometimes pastors don't like it when I say this, but when you're talking about caretaking, right?
Yeah.
How do you take care of the facility? I think when a visitor comes in, there's an aspect that correlates to how well are they going to take care of my soul, right? How well are they going to look after me?
Yeah.
And you kind of hate to almost, in a sense, put it in that term, but when you're coming in and you're evaluating things, what do you have to look at? I mean, most of what you see immediately as a first-time guest has to do with facilities, and then of course the impact of people as well. But
all right, so would the greatest unanticipated blessing be the visitors coming back second, third time, or what would you say has been the greatest unanticipated blessing?
Yeah, that is definitely up there. That's probably the primary. The secondary from that is just the involvement of our people.
Okay.
There are things to do. There are places to serve. And when you've been in a church that's been declining in membership, the last 15 years we lost on average at least 3 people a year. The church was half the size of what it was 15 years ago. Well, that takes a toll on the folks who are committed to the church who are still here.
Sure.
And we are not much larger. I mean, we're up about 3 people on average on attendance from when I came. But the difference is we're not down the 9 over those 3 years that would have been there. And so that has helped just in the attitude, the service, the joy, the excitement. Those things are there that maybe were not as much there before.
All right. So the last question: what was the one challenge that you didn't expect?
I guess in terms of the challenges, perhaps, I mean, obviously there is the financial challenge, and you're working through that. That's real. The other challenge was just maybe personal. When you're doing a lot of the work, being involved in it during the week, and then
Sunday's coming. Sunday's coming, right?
Sunday's coming, and that's like I said. When the guests started coming back, right? I was still working on the church building then. I mean, the sermons hadn't improved. If anything, they'd gotten worse because I was involved in other things. So it wasn't that bringing people in. And so what is it? What is it? And but at the same time, as when for a while there we were online, you can only do that for so long. Let's put it that way. And then we've scaled back to where now we're at a place now where I just plan one day a week to work on facilities.
That's what you do. Okay.
Rather than previously, it could be 5 or 6 days of facility work.
But those dividends are paying off though, right?
Right. I mean, it worked for a season, right?
Yeah.
It was, the season we set it aside for that purpose, and then see the results now.
All right. So we'll put your email address and the church website in the show notes. Okay. And so this has been a great understanding of the impact facilities have on church revitalization. Any last comments? Anything else you want to say? And it's we really appreciate the pictures and the illustrations. So again, those that are listening to this by audio, please go to the YouTube channel, GFA Missions Rechurch, and it will take you to the channel and look for this episode with Pastor Turner. Anything else there?
Sure. No, I'm glad to help, in any way I can. So feel free to email. I'm glad, there are things we've learned along the way, and I don't mind sharing those. pew spacing, rule of thumbs, all of those things. I'm happy to share that information. Yeah. And any way I can help, be glad to.
All right, Pastor John Turner, thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, listeners, thank you for watching and listening to this episode of ReChurch. Again, anything we can do, my email address is mfant@gfamissions.org. Email me, call me. Again, whatever we can do, and we just appreciate your support of the podcast. Thanks, John.
You're listening to ReChurch, a podcast of Gospel Fellowship Association Missions. If you would like more information about our ministry or how we may assist you and your church, visit us at gfamissions.org/consulting.